Okay, everybody. So you know me as Roy Furr. This is a special webinar episode or edition of Breakthrough Marketing Secrets. For those of you attending live, thank you very much, and for those of you catching the recording afterwards, I appreciate you as well. I believe that we're in for a big treat here because my guest on the line here, David Jenyns, I'll tell you what. He asked me to review his book, Systemology, and I have now been through it 2 times, and I paid my new assistant to go through it once. Like I just paid her hourly rate so that she would just focus and sit down and read it. And that should say something because I felt that it was valuable enough to like pay her to do that. So David, I just want to like this is a super quick welcome, but then I want to introduce you with the bio and dive into the questions. So David, welcome and thanks for coming on here.
Yeah, pleasure. Thanks for the kind words and looking forward to talking to the group.
Yes, awesome. So the official title of this is Systemology for Solopreneurs and Virtual Businesses. And what we're doing, because David's book is really focused on just a little bit bigger than that solopreneur size business. So what we're going to do is we're going to take all the principles and we're going to get familiar with them. And I hope some of you, I know that some of you have bought the book already, and I hope some of you have started to think about, okay, how can this apply to me? And what he's going to do is he's going to help us gain clarity about this process in the book and how it applies, especially to the type of people who tend to follow my work, which tends to be, people running marketing agencies and stuff, as well as freelancers and solopreneurs and people launching their businesses and so on. So David's entrepreneurial journey began in his early 20s when he pulled off a really interesting marketing stunt. He actually sold Australia's most beloved sporting venue, the Melbourne Cricket Ground. And I don't know, David, if you know Paul Hartunian's story, but he has a very similar, like they broke down the Brooklyn Bridge and he picked up pieces of it. I don't know if we'll get into that.
That's where I got the idea.
Awesome. So I recognized it. Get the book for that story. I don't know if we'll get to it here, but it's an awesome story. Since then, his business experience has spanned from franchising retail clothing stores to founding one of Australia's most trusted digital agencies, Melbourne's SEO Services. And in 2016, he successfully systemized himself out of that business. He hired a CEO and stepped back from the daily operations. So the business was making money without him doing it. And through that process, he became a systems devotee and founded Systemology. Today, his mission, and we're going to hear that full story in just a minute. Today, his mission is to free all business owners worldwide from the daily operations of running their business. And to do this, he spends most of his time supporting the growing community of certified systemologists as they help business owners implement Systemology. And he also delivers workshops, keynote addresses, and hosts his own popular podcast, Business Processes Simplified. So with that,
yes,
Abe, who's on this call, tells me that I need to breathe more when I'm going into it. With that, David, welcome, and I appreciate you being here.
Yeah, pleasure. Thank you. It covers quite a bit, and I think a lot of business owners, you kind of feel like when you're in the moment and you're following this journey, it feels quite linear. You do this, you do that. But then when you hear someone read your bio, you're like, wow, that just sounds like it's all over the place. But it sounded very logical in the moment as I was doing it.
I'm sure. Like if I listed all of my exploits and misadventures, it would feel similar. So David, Actually, I want to address one quick question. Will the webinar and slides be available after the webinar? So we're not doing slides, we're doing a Q&A. The recording will be available afterwards. So I will let you guys know about that. But David, in the beginning of your Systemology book, you share your story that led to the creation of the system of Systemology.
Yes.
And you say that you were working 50, 60 hours a week. You were running Melbourne SEO Services, your marketing agency, and something really big happened in your life and you decided, hey, something's got to change. So
that's right.
Can we start? Just share that story.
That something was my wife and I found out we were pregnant with our first son or first child. And I remember at that moment getting flashbacks to my dad, who was a business owner as well. And we worked from home. He was self-employed, but he was always, even though he was at home, he was never really there. It's like his brain was somewhere else and also working very long hours. And then I just thought, I don't want to be that dad who's just not present. And I could see myself already heading down that track with the digital agency, working really long hours. And then I thought, why haven't I been able to systemize to this point? And what was it that was actually stopping me? And there's all this baggage floating around in my head around, oh, I can't systemize a digital agency. Google changes all the time. And if I make a system or a process, it's going to go straight out of date. And I thought, my staff, they're not going to follow systems because they're really creative people. They are writing articles and creating content, and you can't systemize that. And I thought, Google and the online landscape, it's just so complex. There's going to be too many moving parts. And I had all this stuff going on in my head that was why I hadn't done it, because that digital agency up until that point had been running for a little over 10 years at that point, with me very much running in the operations with a small team around me, contractors, full-time team members, part-time team members, and a couple of little sort of odd job type people. But I was right at the center of it. And then we got pregnant and I thought, no, I don't want to be that guy. I've seen other digital agencies grow beyond the founder. I've got to really crack this nut.
So, that's, I used a metaphor recently, and I may have gotten it from the book, but when I was trying to describe what this was, that it's like you were the hub in a wheel, and the wheel, to keep spinning, needed to spin right around you, the hub. And I mean, so many people just wouldn't wake up. I feel like this probably feels familiar to a lot of people who are on this call as entrepreneurs, as marketers, as agency owners, or freelancers. That feels like our businesses really do spin around us. So like, I want to kind of walk through the lifespan of that agency a little bit.
Yes.
So that like those of us on the call can say, oh yeah, I'm at that spot. So like, did this start as was it a solo business or a partner? You talk about kind of having a virtual team. Like, how did it get started?
It started off, one of the first things I did after my little selling the MCG exploit was I thought, oh, well, I want to make lots of money. That's my purpose here. And I thought, okay, well, where's the money? Well, the money's in the stock market. So I thought, well, I'm going to go learn how to trade the stock market. And I took out a loan and I went and did one of those weekend learn how to trade the stock market type courses. And I was expecting to be Warren Buffett by Monday morning. And then I very quickly found out, well, you can't really make money on the stock market unless you had money. I didn't really have much money because I just spent all of my money doing this course. And then I was kind of like stuck. And then I realized I was quite good at using a particular software package that they were teaching in the course. And a lot of the other participants, because they were a bit older, they couldn't use it very well. So I thought, well, maybe I'll write some education around it. So I teamed up with a guy and we wrote a study guide for this particular charting package. And that particular product did really well in the immediate group. And then I found, okay, well, you can have a great product, but unless anybody really knows it exists, it's not really worth anything. Because I then thought, well, I need to get the word out. And that's when I started to get interested in digital marketing, YouTube, like the early days of YouTube, and then just classic copywriting and direct mail and internet marketing. I got really obsessed in that space to promote this little home study course on this charting package. And that went really well for a good few years. My business partner, he ended up being sort of the lead content creator and I was more the marketer. And we worked really well until they changed the laws in Australia, the financial laws. They required a certain level of licensing if you were going to give what they considered general financial advice.
Okay.
And they classed what we were doing as general financial advice. Now, at that point, I'd built up, probably about 5 or 6 team members who were doing content writing, a little bit of SEO, chopping up some videos. They're really just a collection of different freelancers that I'd worked with over time. And my business partner, when that law came out, he said, well, I'm kind of heading in this way. And I headed in an opposite way. So I was kind of like stuck with, well, what do I do now? I've got this team. And then I thought, well, maybe I apply what we're doing in a very hyper competitive space, like stock market education. We were going after keywords like trading systems and Forex and those sorts of things. And I thought, well, imagine if we applied this same thinking into just local businesses. And that was kind of like the birth of Melbourne SEO services. And it really just started off with just me with a handful of contractors around me who'd handle bits and pieces that I would just get to help out, when I got a client.
Yeah. So it's like that, it's that classic entrepreneurial journey is like, I got into this because I was solving my own problem. And then I turned around and realized that it would be valuable to solve this problem for others. And so then you transition and everything. So like early on, were systems playing a big role? Like as you were transitioning, like from, oh, we're running this trading information business to we're running an SEO agency. Or was it just you telling everybody what to do?
I think it was the latter. And it really felt like that was also a big change, moving from, some nuggets to drop in the laps of anyone who's a bottleneck or the solo entrepreneur, is changing your thinking away from being very task driven to moving to more role based. So I used to think about, I got these different contractors and team members. I'd give one of them a bunch of tasks. I'd move to the next one. I'd give them a bunch of tasks. I'd move to the next one. I'd give them a bunch of tasks. I'd get all the way through the team. I'd get to the last person to give them tasks. And then I'd have to go back to the first person to start giving them tasks again because they'd just finished all the tasks that I'd given them. And then I wouldn't really get any space for my own work. My own work, that's what would be happening in the mornings, at nights, or on weekends, because most of the time during the week, I was just keeping everybody busy. And that is a very task-driven way of thinking. One of the insights to move from solo to thinking more about team is you start to think in terms of responsibility. So This person is in charge of the finance stuff. This person is in charge of content, as opposed to breaking it down to the granular task. That's the job of the team member to be thinking about that if that's their responsibility. So that was kind of like one of those shifts that, yes, because very much in the early days, it was heavily task driven.
For those of you who've worked with like virtual assistants and stuff, certainly if this sounds familiar, you can say yes in the chat, because for me, like this is something that I'm like, I have failed multiple times at trying to get help in my business. And sometimes I've been more successful, but it is with that. It's like if I give this person a project and I trust them to figure it out versus I tell them all the individual steps. So like this kind of feeds into the different stage, almost micromanagement. Yes.
I'm a recovering micromanager. It's true.
So in your book, you talk about the 4 stages of business systemization. And I think a lot of us in like this kind of solopreneur space or just trying to build a virtual business are probably in one of the first 2. But I'd kind of like to walk through the 4, just like with a quick overview, getting all the way up to that punchline of the book of like how the SEO agency grew and went through those 4 stages.
So the 4 stages, the way I came across these really was after working with a good number of businesses and then also reflecting on my own businesses and the journey that I went through. And I kind of realized there are 4 stages specifically when we think about business systemization. The first one I call survival mode. Survival mode is usually where you're very reactionary and the team or yourself, it's almost like it's firefighting mode. So whatever is the biggest issue in the moment is what gets your attention. If you don't have enough clients or you don't have a client, hey, I need to go out and win work. If you've got a client, hey, I've got to answer this client's questions because they're having troubles. If it's a team member that needs something addressed to, it's whatever, basically, it's the squeaky wheel that's getting your attention. And in that situation, you're not really thoughtful in the way that you're doing work. It is survival mode. Performance at this level is very up and down. You're you want work, you chase out, you go get work, you take any work you can get, you do the work, you finish the work, you get to the bottom, and then you go, oh, I've got to get another job now. You go out, you get work, you do the work, it's just this cycle that's very lumpy, and the performance isn't consistent.
So with I don't know, I'd say about half my list are copywriters, freelance copywriters, or staff copywriters, but we're all familiar with this cycle of that is the life of a freelancer, really.
Yes.
Yeah.
And part of that, and we'll talk about the idea of getting systems and processes in place. Part of that happens is because you don't have a method of generating leads that consistently runs, whether you're focusing in on it or not, because you constantly want to be feeding leads into the top of your funnel so that when you do have capacity or when you're ready to take that next job, the lead is already there. The problem is there's usually a lead time between getting a lead and lead, but there's a space in time between when you get the initial prospect and they turn into a client. There's a space there. And that takes time. So if you only start that when you finish a job, then you're going to have a little moment of famine. You goes feast, famine, feast, famine, feast, famine, as you're waiting for the next job to get paid. So that first survival stage, really the biggest thing that holds someone in that, it's almost like that unconscious incompetence. You're not aware that you are the bottleneck. So I always say, look, if you've already recognized, and I would like to think by you attending, the webinar here today, that you probably, you might have a foot inside survival, but you're also in stationary because at least now you're aware. Yes. So the next stage across is stationary. Stationary, usually this is where the team doesn't have a particular way of doing things. So each team member or contractor might do things a certain way, but all of the IP is trapped up inside the head of the team member, whether that's you as the freelancer or whether it's the contractors that you're working with. There is a way that's happening, just you're so person dependent, and that way has not been identified outside of that person. Okay. And you might have some team members that, resonate with the idea of systems and processes, and you might have some that don't. Like, at least if you had the discussion with them, some of them would be open to the idea and some of them may not. Whereas oftentimes in survival mode, there's not even a thought of systems and processes. It's kind of like, we don't even like them because we're too busy.
It goes from feast and famine firefighting, which is survival, to okay, we've kind of got this figured out, but it's all hands on deck. Everybody's just doing what they have to do today, which is an advanced form of survival, really. That's stationary.
Yes.
But then you go from this conscious incompetence to what?
So now it's conscious incompetence, and then when we move to, I suppose, conscious competence, which is effectively the next stage, which is scalability. Scalability happens when you start to have some things documented. And by documented, it might just be a Loom video or a Zoom video. Yes. It doesn't have to be like this real fancy, detailed process that explains every possible scenario for a situation. But you might have figured out, this is the way that I sell, or this is the way that I lead generate, or this is the way that I start a project, or this is the way I deliver. So there might be parts of what you're doing, or maybe, hey, I have a way that I issue an invoice out to the client. So what ends up happening here is you start to get knowledge captured, but it's patchy. And not only that, it's usually all over the place. So you might have some in Dropbox, you might have some in Google Drive, some of them might be in Google Docs, some might be on your desktop, some might be on your team member's desktop. So it's everywhere. And that the knowledge is kind of there for some things, but it's very clunky. And probably the biggest dead giveaway that you're in scalability is that you constantly have to remind the team to follow process. Hey,
Okay.
when a lead comes in, this is the email template you send them. Hey, we've talked about this 4 times now. When the lead comes in, you send them this email template and then you add them in over here into our CRM. And then we follow up with them. Like, it's a constant thing. The performance at this level, though, starts to take off because you're starting to get a bit of a team going. You've got a way of doing things. It's just you haven't organized that knowledge. And
So
that's
what did this transition look like in your Melbourne SEO agency? Was it just what did it look like for you?
One thing I've noticed, because I've been involved in a few different businesses now. We had the rock and roll clothing music store. I had the digital agency. We had a sub brand of the digital agency, which was a web video company. And then there are all the little side things that I've done along the way. And I've realized, you have to go through the stages in a linear order. You can't jump from survival and go straight to the last stage or even scalable, because you're right. There is a journey. You got to first go, survival oftentimes is about figuring out what product to market fit is. It's about going, who is my target audience? What is the problem that they have? How am I solving that? Is there a product to market fit? Have I got the right message? That's what happens in that first one. Oftentimes that's why you take different type of work, because you just want to get work and you don't yet know what good work is and what bad work is. And you don't know who you can solve the problems and who you can't. Once you figure that out, and then you kind of move into the next stage, which is the stationary. Now it's kind of like finding your way. You've got your product to market fit, but now you're kind of going, well, how do we do things? And how do we then capture that? So when I think about the digital agency, I'd kind of already figured out the product to market fit bit with the trading business, because I'd learned SEO and I knew that was valuable, and I knew businesses needed traffic, and we had done that really well. It was very early days of search engine optimization. There weren't all of the education and courses, and Google wasn't nearly as smart as they are today. So it was much easier for someone to give me $1 and I could give them $3 or $5 back as a marketing person, because we'd really figured out what that looked like. So I'd got product to market fit. So when we were in the digital agency and I got started, initially I was more in stationary mode, but in the back of my head, with all of my pre-knowledge around the stock market education stuff, we used to talk about trading systems, which is, when do you get in? When do you get out? How do you design a trading system that removes the emotion from day-to-day trading, because you pre-think about the rules so that even someone else could trade it. So I already had some very basic programming on that. So with that in mind, when I was in stationary mode, we started making very rough checklists, not even detailed processes. And they were just more for me, high level process, like this is the journey. And I have my journals, like I keep these from like 100 years back. I can't reach it because I got my headphones on. But it has the very first drawings of the critical client flow, which you'll know because you've read the book. The critical client flow was born out of this idea that for the better part of about 5 years, I can look in my journal and I was constantly redrawing the critical client flow, which is what is the linear journey that a prospect through to client goes through to deliver the core product or service look like. And getting very clear on that makes it much easier then to build the system around it. So then I started to move into Scalable, and I started to have some of the systems and processes in place. It wasn't until, though, I found my CEO that we then moved into the final stage, which is Saleable. Because then when that happened, I really thought, and it's when I had that breakthrough moment of, hey, I don't want to be that dad who's always too busy. I kind of had some things in place for the business, but it was still heavily dependent on me. Like I trained my staff, if they had problems, to come to me. All of the clients were coming to me because I sold them So they got to know me. They saw all the videos on the website. Then they chatted with me on the phone. I did the initial audit before I started handing to the team. They all wanted to chat with me. So that then became the issue. And it wasn't until Melissa came in and we said, I changed my thinking. I said, if this business depends on me, the business is broken. And that kind of got me then really thinking, if I can't see a way to deliver a core product or service without me and have it make money, then this is not a business. Ends up being that job.
Yeah, it's a fancy job.
A fancy job. That's right. A fancy, well-paying job.
and way more responsibility too. Because you're running it for everybody. So you essentially had to go from documenting kind of your own systems that you could loop people in on to the business becomes a system where you're no longer the hub in the middle of that wheel. So you went on, you hired a CEO, you built the business to the point where you didn't have to be in it. And then you went off and started doing other stuff. And your book ends with the ultimate punchline and promise of Systemology. And I want to let you share what happened to your marketing agency then in the end.
So the final stage of the 4 stages of business systemization is Saleable. And I say in the book, it's not about selling your business. It's about building a business that is saleable. And when you reach Saleable, that means you've got all of your departments documented. You're starting to run with more precision and consistency to solve the problem of your clients. And the real dead giveaway that you've reached salability is when your staff say, this is how we do things here. When they reach that stage, you've got a process, they know where to find it, and this is how we do things here. And there's less of that constant reminding. So Melissa, when she came on board and I had that insight and I said, well, I don't want to be that guy. I need to get a CEO in. We plugged her in. I let her know that this is the real goal. And she had some good experience with help. Like she was a manager, whereas I was more of a leader. So she was more of a people person, detail orientated, loved systems and processes. So she was driving that and then worked over the course of about 9 to 12 months where she worked with me to really systemize and then remove me. And then I took a little bit of time out. I took, a couple of years where I was kind of just focusing on the kids. We had a second child and I thought, need to try and be more present. And all of the businesses that I'd done up until that point I just kind of fell into it. It wasn't a strategic decision of this is what I want to do because I enjoy it. And over that period, Melissa, it was a great business for me because she basically ran it. I would chat with her about once a month and we would have our leadership meeting where we'd get together and we'd look over the P&Ls, we'd talk about what the top priorities are, and she'd basically just report back and then ask for direction. I had never had any plans. I thought, well, this is a fantastic dream business. I'm never going to sell this because
hold on. For everybody who's on here, who's in marketing, who's probably overworked because you are that hub in the wheel. Does even just getting to that place sound good? I mean, put it in the chat, please, because to me, knowing where my business is at right now, it's definitely not at that saleable point, and it sounds good to me.
Well, I loved it too because every quarter as a business owner, like I wasn't getting a wage from the business, I was getting a profit distribution. So I changed my thinking as well. Like I got a little bit of a wage because I was doing the meetings with Melissa, but then I saw every quarter I would give myself a profit distribution as an owner of the business. Yes. And I thought, look, I'm just going to leave this forever. But she worked that business for a little over 3 years, and then the bombshell hit. She said, look, I've got to fly back to the States because she's here in Australia and her family's in the US. I've got some family stuff that I have to attend to. So she went away. She'd already trained up her second in charge. So Jillian then started running things while she was gone, and Melissa went for basically 2 months. When she came back, I thought, okay, well, we can kind of get back to normal. And then she said, look, I'm going to have to resign. I'm going to have to move back to the States. And I just remember at the time going, because at that point, the business was a bit of a dream business for me. and it was generating profit. It was enabling me to go off and start thinking about other stuff, spend some time on the family. And then I thought, okay, well, maybe this is a blessing in disguise. Like I'd lost the passion for the digital agency at that point because I'd been out of it for so long, and I'd been in digital agency land for so long. Before that, I'd really learnt what I needed to from that industry. And then I thought, okay, well, maybe this is the time to sell. And I put it out to market, and I got two offers very, very quickly. One of them was a better fit for the team and was really wanting to run it and grow it. And I basically sold the business. When I asked him afterwards, I said, why did you buy the business? And he said there were two reasons. One, financial performance. Second was the fact that you had not been in it for the last 3 years. So I know that the business is really smoothly run. Now, he knew Melissa was leaving, and he was a bit more of an owner operator. So he's come back in, but we had Gillian, who was the second in charge. So I've said to him, this is the first business he's ever not been the CEO. He promoted Gillian into CEO, and him as a business owner now tries to sit as separate as possible. The business still runs, he navigated really well through COVID and has come out, super strong out the other side. And that for me ended up being, at the time I thought, oh, this is horrible. But then I look back now and I go, it's probably the best thing that could have happened, because one, it was a real proof of what Systemology offers, and also gave me the chance to see the business through the 4 stages, because we kind of go from, survival, stationary, scalable, and then saleable. And I took that business to saleable, and I've now done 3 businesses that I've taken them from survival mode through to saleable. I did that with the video production business, which was a sub business. And we did that for Planet 13, which was the rock and roll clothing music store. So I've now realized I can see this process, and I see how many people struggle with it. And then that's really what led to Systemology, because I was like, wow, this is a problem that a lot of business owners struggle to solve. So I'm going to do my best to help business owners solve that problem.
Yes. So let's kind of turn the corner here. And I think that there's a good pivot point. Patrick says, it feels like my journey to the last stage, Saleable, is as long and painful as Frodo's journey to Mordor. I can appreciate that, maybe especially the first time through. But what I appreciate about Systemology is going through it now twice. I don't remember if I said that on the call itself, but I've been through it twice. I paid my assistant to go through it. And it is the simplest approach to, I've read Scaling Up, and I've read Traction, and I've read any number of books about business systems, and they're all great. But so many of them seem to kind of miss the mark as far as here's how to actually start building a systemized business, as opposed to here's an advanced system that you can put in your running business. So now you're building your Systemology, you've transitioned into Systemology full-time and helping others systematize their businesses. And where do you see, people maybe a lot like Patrick, where do you see them struggling or going wrong in developing systems for their business?
So I think, I identified that this is a problem just like you, where I read all the books, E-Myth, Work the System, Built to Sell, Traction, Scaling Up. I'd read them all. And I always came back to the question, I already know business systems are important. I got it. I know they're important, but where do I start? And that was always the issue. And then I looked to things like Six Sigma and Lean. Now, it's in the name for those that they're process improvement systems. Now, that pre-assumes you have a process to improve. So most of them are about eliminating waste and looking at what you're already doing and flow charting it and going, oh, if we move this step here. But a lot of the businesses that I know, small businesses, solo entrepreneurs, they don't even have a way yet. They haven't even identified what it is that they're doing. They can't improve something that they don't even yet know about. So Systemology is very different in its aim here is to identify best practice as you're currently doing it. It might not be the best practice in the world, but it's the best practice that's going on inside your organization. It's capturing that. It's considering that as version number one. And then you're looking to basically improve and build on there. So a lot of business owners, they go wrong. The biggest one is that they already have a picture in their head of what they think a systemized business looks like. And they're looking at a business that may have been systemizing for a huge amount of time. They're looking at the final output and they're saying, a systemized business looks like this.
Yeah, you give the example of McDonald's in the book, like where it's like there's all these super simple systems to follow. And
so McDonald's is a great one because people look at, I often, when I'm presenting to a group, one of the things I'll ask them, I'll say, what's the first business that comes to mind when you think of a systemized business? 9 times out of 10, it's McDonald's, it's Subway, it's fast food businesses that have really systemized their operations. Now, when you think about McDonald's systems, they've systemized everything. They've systemized how you take out the trash. They've systemized how you warm up the grill and get it ready. And they've systemized how to turn on a thick make machine and turn the lights on. Like they've systemized absolutely everything. Now, they did that over 60 years. And what people do is they look at the finished product of 60 years and say, I should systemize like that. When what they should do is they should go out and hire the movie The Founder, which talks about Ray Kroc and the McDonald's story, and they'll see the very first version of the system that they created. He goes out onto this basketball court, he gets a piece of chalk, and they map out the store, and they say, the cash register goes here, the drinks machine goes here, the fryer goes here. No, let's move that because that needs to be near the checkout window. And it's so raw and it's so early days and so malleable. That's how systems start. So where people go wrong is that they go, I should systemize like McDonald's. No, you should systemize like McDonald's was 60 years ago.
My mistake, I feel like, is always like, and this was a huge thing. You said it once in the book and it totally jumped out at me. That my mistake is I create these granular processes because I'm kind of thinking that McDonald's 60 years down the line, here's how to do every single little step. But you said, just think of it like an overview. Like these are the steps that we follow. This is the overview. And since that little shift, it's so much easier and quicker to create systems because it's just like, here's the 7 steps that we do for this. And if there's questions, you can ask me. Right. Yep. Because right now I'm the knowledgeable person about how to do that. But I don't have to document every little step with screenshots and all of that. And even those 7 steps can come out of me just sitting down and recording a video and somebody else taking notes on that.
Love it. You nailed it. And that is also the other thing to think about. McDonald's aims to hire 15-year-old kids who know nothing to be able to come in off the street and then to make a perfect hamburger and do it within the course of a week. Now, most people, at least the businesses that I want to build, I hire intelligent people. I want really great people who are really good at what they do and A players. So A players, you don't need to tell them how to suck eggs. If you give them the overview system and they're smart, they're going to have a pretty good shot at it. In fact, if you give them the super granular detail thing, sometimes that makes them go, this is written for dummies. I'm not a dummy. I'm in the wrong business. So you want to attract in great people. So that definitely that's a big area where people go wrong.
Yes. So I'm realizing that we're getting close to the end of the hour, and I want to make sure that I cover the most important questions going forward. So there's questions coming in about being a freelance copywriter, and we were going to talk about solopreneurs and freelancers, and how many do follow my work, and so kind of 2 layers to this question. When is the right time, just as a freelance copywriter, to start thinking about systemization, or a solopreneur, solo service provider, if you're running this kind of business? And then do you have to build into an agency and sell the agency, or is there flexibility? And I have some thoughts on that second part, but I want to let you answer first.
So there is a few things there. Firstly, one of the first things that you should do, regardless of where you're at, is work through the first exercise in the book called the critical client flow. You don't even need to get the book to do this. I can tell you what the exercise is right now. It's really, really simple. And it's very high level. All you have to figure out is what is the linear journey that the prospect through to client goes through to deliver a core product or service. So how does it work? You get yourself an A4 bit of paper. In the top left-hand corner, you write who is your target audience. That's who the person you want to sell to, who is a pleasure to work with, pay your advertised prices, refer friends and family, and you'd like more of them. That's your dream client. Then the thing after that, what is the primary product or service that you would sell to them first as an introductory to ongoing services with you? What is the starting point, the first thing? Then the next step after that is to just work down the page and identify the steps, that linear journey, starting with how do you grab their attention? What are the ways? Now, the one thing about the critical client flow is always think about what are you currently doing, not what you would like to be doing. So don't try and go, oh, I would love to be doing social media. I'm going to put that in the box. Well, if you're not doing social media now, don't put it in the box. And just start off high level, not more than 2 or 3 words in a box. How do you currently get the attention of that target client? The next one down, when that person is interested, how do they inquire? Like, do they shoot you an email? Do they fill out a web form? Do they pick up the phone and call you? Do they do all of the above? Whatever that is, each box is just a few words. Keep working down the page. How do you then sell them? Do you hop on Zoom? Do you have a discussion? After the Zoom call, do you send out the proposal? Do you follow them up? When they're ready to go, what do? Do you take a deposit? Do you take 50% up front and charge the rest on completion? Do you charge all up front? Keep working down the page. Then once they've signed off on it and they said they want to go and they've paid your deposit, then do you have some sort of onboarding process? Like, do they fill out a questionnaire? Do you meet with them again on Zoom to ask them about what they need or what you need from the project? Then we kind of move down to the delivery part, which is usually the most complex. So because it's the most complex, I'm going to suggest we keep it high level. And just like Roy suggested there, that would be the perfect place for an overview system. So because everybody jumps into, oh, there's so many systems under here, how can I just put it in one box? But let's say you just put it in one box for now. And then finally, what is the handover? And how do you then get them to come back or refer friends and family? So map that out as an A4 bit of paper. Only capture what you're currently doing. And what you're basically identifying is how can the business make money? Because if you could have that delivered without any key person dependency, then you've created something scalable. And as a freelancer, as a copywriter, keep that front and center, print it out, have it next to your computer, and just constantly think about how can I make this work without me? And start to just create little systems and checklists. Because you're a solo entrepreneur, or you've got a handful of team members, you're not going to get tremendous leverage by going into super granular detail. So just keep everything very high level. And it's a little bit counterintuitive, but systemize everything else around the copywriting except for the copywriting. Now, I know you want to systemize yourself out of the copywriting, but do that last. Systemize everything else, how you get the client, how you sell the client, how you invoice the client, how you set up the project. Do everything else that is easy and leave the hardest bit till last. And then, yes, if you want to sell the business at some point, I mean, what does a potential acquirer look for? They want to know that the business is going to continue to operate when you walk out the door. So at some point, you are going to have to try and bring another copywriter in, which is hard because copywriting business, it's such a particular skill. It can be very well paid, but most copywriters are just high paid employees of their own business. And they're because it's such a challenging skill to really master. And then those that do master it, oftentimes they go out and do their own thing, or they think they should be charged $1 million. Hey, I'm writing a sales letter for you. This is worth $50,000, which then makes it a challenge.
So at the very end there, you made the point that I wanted to make is that, of course, you can build an agency, and that's a great path to building a systematized business. It's probably not going to be the super the A-list copywriter where it's 10,000 word VSL script. You might be able to systematize that a bit, but I mean that starts to be hard to sell. But I have known so many copywriters who go from starting as a freelance copywriter to they build their own business in some completely different industry. And I'm not just talking agencies. I'm talking they start publishing products, or they start, acquiring products and doing e-commerce stuff, or they whatever, right? And all of that can start to be systematized, and won't necessarily rely on you to deliver your core service in quite the same way as trying to sell copywriting services. And so the same thinking is great.
100%. You nailed something really important there. And I only discovered this after working in the agency for a very long time. The best thing about agency work is how closely you work with your clients over a period of time, which then enables you to deeply understand their problems. And then what you're actually looking at doing, I think agencies are the best place to identify what a good business would be outside of agency that you could build. And it becomes the side project, because you go, wow, I keep seeing this same problem with all of these clients I'm working with closely. They can't solve it, but I can see the answer. And then you try and systemize that, and that might become the little side business off to the side, and that might become the core business. Really, I mean, that's the way that Systemology and System Hub started. I was working with agencies. I started, once we systemized our own business, I said, where do we store these systems and these processes? I don't like Dropbox, Google Drive, all the rest of it. So then we developed System Hub, which is a SaaS platform to store systems and processes. That came from working with agencies and also scratching my own itch. Then that became the side business that now became my full-time business, because I could see the scale in that. It was still challenging. There's extra challenges when it comes to scaling agency type business, because the work is so one-on-one and close with the clients, and then it's so staff and labor intensive. As you scale it, the challenges also scale pretty quickly as well, because now you've got all these HR issues, you've got client issues. There's a lot of moving parts. Yes, it's possible, but I then saw, there is an easier model over here, but I wouldn't have seen that unless I'd worked in agency land.
Yeah. I mean, it's great spending however long working with a bunch of different clients. Suddenly you understand so many different types of businesses so quickly. I have one more bigger question, and then I want to kind of open up for Q&A, and I have 4 rapid fire questions of my own that maybe we can get to. And I think that we've started to speak to this, how, if we start to install this systemology thinking in our brains and in our businesses, how might creating, when you've seen this with clients that you've worked with and people that you've taught, how might creating a systematized business change our own total vision and sense of possibility, maybe not just for our businesses, but for ourselves?
The biggest thing I find is that most business owners, they start off with this big picture and they think about the business that they would like to create. And when they actually get to it, they get stuck in the business and they're so in the thick of it. It's almost like you're on a treadmill that never stops. You just keep running and running and running. And then little do you know, there are so many opportunities that fly past you. Some you might actually notice. You might go, oh, that's a huge opportunity, but I just can't do it because I'm too busy. Hey, I've got too much client work. That's not something that I can do. Or maybe there are opportunities that you don't even see because you're so head down in the thick of it, you don't even notice the opportunity. So the biggest thing that a systemized business allows is it allows the business owner to step out of the machine, but the machine keeps working. That when they step out, that creates space. And when you create the space for a business owner, that's when they do their best work. That's when they're creative. That's when they see the opportunities. That's when they go, oh, wow, I sometimes think of it like snakes and ladders. Here I am moving up a snakes and ladders board, and I'm just going one step at a time. I roll the dice. I move a couple of steps. Occasionally, you land on a ladder, and that ladder might shoot you up 30 spots. But you've got to be able to climb that ladder. Notice you land on a ladder and be ready to climb on that ladder. So systems is a way just to handle all of the stuff that has to happen in business for business to be able to function. Then that creates space for the business owner, and then the business owner potentially can, climb up a ladder and significantly improve their situation. So it really will change the game. And you also have to change your thinking. You move from an employee mentality to really start to think about a business owner mentality. It's different. You see your business as a system, and you see there are these subsystems, which are the departments, and it all works together. And oftentimes most business owners, they're strong at one or two things, but they've got to understand the health of the entire system means all of the departments need to be healthy. All of the subsystems have to be healthy. You need a lead generation system. You need a sales system. You need a HR system, a delivery system, a management system. And your business can only grow as large as whatever that weakest link is. You can't just go, I'll just sell more. Because if you sell more and you can't deliver, then clients have a poor experience, and then word gets out that you're rubbish on delivery. You can't just be great at delivery, because if you don't have any clients, you got nobody to sell to. You can't just be great at sales and delivery and not have your HR down, because if you don't have team members, you're going to be the one doing it, and there's only so much you can grow to. So you have to look at the health of the system, not one individual piece.
I would say that one of the great things that starts to come out of this is things that you used to feel like you had to micromanage, you can just trust, because you know that the system is there to get the outcome that you want. And so you say, I need this outcome, and you trust that it will happen. And that's a wonderful experience, because you can start to step back. I want to just hit Q&A kind of quickly. I know that we're getting to the end of the hour. So kind of some leading questions here. Do business systems remove creativity?
Common misconception is that people think that they do, but the opposite is true. And a great example of that would be when I used to own the video production business. This is how I learnt this. Initially, when we first started that business, I went out with a videographer on a shoot. In the car, in his head, we had a discussion for about 45 minutes going, oh, did I bring that spare battery? Oh, did I bring the extra camera? Oh, have I got everything? Does the client know where we're meeting? Oh, let's quickly call and make sure that we're all ready to go. We spent the entire 45 minutes thinking about all of the things that should have just been handled. Fast forward about 3 months later, we got a pre-shoot checklist into place, and we got an onboarding system for the client. With all of that in place, the team member, now videography is incredibly creative, and we got into the car, and I remember going on another shoot, and we spent that journey talking about what the shot list was. Where are we going to shoot? How does he want to frame it? What's important to get into the shot? What were the storylines? Like all of the creative stuff. He actually created extra space for him to think about that by having a system. By having a system, it ensures that all the stuff that has to happen happens so that you can be creative.
Because all those details were answered by, is the checklist done? Yeah, the checklist is done. Now we can focus on the important work. Awesome. Yeah. So how do you get your team, besides experiences like that, how do you get your team to buy in?
There's numerous things there, because every person's a little bit individual. It's understanding their motivations and helping them to understand the benefit of the systems to them individually. This is not about building a system so that you can go lie on the beach and get large amounts of money deposited into your bank account with little or no work. Like, as much as that sounds like a magical dream for you, the team member doesn't care about that. So you have to think about what's important to them. When they take leave, they want to be able to actually have a holiday and know when they come back, they're not going to come to an exploding inbox with millions of tasks that haven't been done, or go on a holiday and have you calling them up saying, oh, where did you leave this project? Nobody wants that. So that might be one reason. Another reason could be you could tell team members, well, for you to be more valuable to the organization, to move up, to get promoted, you need to systemize what you're doing, and then you can delegate your tasks to a lower cost team member. That then makes you more valuable and you can take on higher tasks. So again, there's a lot to that question, but getting them involved in the process, getting them to take ownership. And now's actually the best time in history to systemize a business because of COVID. COVID has got everybody so accepting of change, and they go, well, my home life has changed, my work has changed, my community has changed, I'm working from home now. So when you come to them as a business owner and say, hey, we have to change the way that we're working, we're now going to follow systems and processes, they're a lot more accepting. So if you're going to do it, now's the time.
Awesome. So one point that you make, and this is a little bit hard for like solopreneurs and freelancers, but why is the business owner typically the worst person to document their processes?
They're the worst person because they are so busy. So the last thing that a solo entrepreneur needs is another to-do list item or checklist. So that's why we make it easy. And you identified it earlier. Start with an overview. Just do a checklist. Record yourself doing the thing. Don't go out of your way to do a system and a process. Record yourself doing the thing in the moment. Consider that recording in that first system the worst it will ever be. And that's okay. That's version 1. Just capture something because something is better than nothing. And make it easy on yourself because you're busy.
Awesome. Yeah. And frankly, having just someone to, even if it's like I hire a coach or I hire a systemology coach, or I hire a virtual assistant who can just kind of reflect it back to you. I find that that's a quick way to get it out of your head. And that's something you recommend in the book. Patrick asked, what's the biggest obstacle in building a system as like a creative, he says freelance copywriter, but I'll more generally suggest creative. And is there any good way to overcome this?
Look, the way to do it, once you identify the critical client flow, systemize everything that's not creative first. When it comes to the creative piece, just do an overview system and think in terms of high-level process. So let's say you're a copywriter. You might go, step number 1 in my overview is meet with the client, get very clear on who the target audience is and the brief. And there might be a couple of bullet points high level. Step number 2, I don't know why my printer's just turned on. Step number 2 might be have a go at, doing all of your own research. Step number 3 might be write the skeleton of the sales letter. Step number 4 might be now add in the fleshy points and the details and blah, blah, blah. So you come up with a high level process. Don't go down super micro painful detail. Just think creative process, high level. What would happen if you were going to bring in a junior copywriter and you just gave them a one pager that says, hey, this is my high level process? That's how you'd start.
Another big recommendation that I have for you, like the first system essentially that I was created in my business was taxes. It's a role in the business that has to happen. And I suck at it, and I suck at bookkeeping. And my system for that is give Tom and Megan, all my stuff. And if they ask for something, I give it to them. and that's my system for most of the financial track. I do some other stuff that's like more exciting to me, but is not like filling out tax forms, right? And doing the bookkeeping required to fill out tax forms. But when you think about the different roles in your business that are not that core deliverable, those are the things to systemize first, because it just like it opens you up again to focus on the important stuff, to be creative.
Yes. And I mean, that's the financial one is an interesting one. You can start off with asking them, your bookkeeper, how can I best give you what you need to get your great result? And then they might say, I need this, 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 and this. That might be version 1 of a system, which is how to prepare what you need to give to your financial person. You might do that for a little while, and then over time you might go, oh, wow, I don't even need to do that. I could get a virtual assistant who does that prep work. And then similarly, there might be 1 or 2 other things where you're like, hey, bookkeeper, here are the 2 or 3 things I need from you. I want you to send me a monthly P&L. I want you to send me this quarterly report. And then you create a little bit of a checklist and a system. You don't need to write a system on how to generate that report, but you could kind of create a bit of a system that triggers to outreach to that bookkeeper to generate that for you.
Yes. And like, I mean, one great way to create more value in your business is just to do your most valuable activities more. And this is a great way to do that. So I'm going to take one last question from Ravi before we wrap up. It says, I'm going to reword this a little bit because I don't totally understand it, but like, would it be a good idea basically to have a virtual project manager from the beginning? If you're kind of launching a new business, and I have my own thoughts on that, but I'll let you answer first and see if my experience is different.
This you could go in any direction because it kind of depends on your own personal situation. If you have the cash flow and you can fund it, then getting a team member on, and also if that virtual project manager has experience in your particular industry and vertical, they might be able to come in, and if you give them Systemology and say, hey, I want to capture what you're doing and extract it out of your brain, and I want you to create some high-level systems and processes on how we're going to be running these, then that might be quite valuable, assuming that you can cash flow it. But if you can't cash flow it, that's also okay. Then just start off by creating your own rough framework, because by the time you can afford it and you get a project manager on, if you can say to them, hey, here's the way that we sort of do things here, but I would love it if you can help me improve it because I'm not a project manager. All I've done is kind of roughly figured it out. So it really comes down to your situation. If you can afford it and you can get someone who's good, great, then do that. If you can't really afford it and you're going to get someone who's crap at it, then maybe you're better off just waiting until you've got a bit of a process, because then you can brief the crap project manager on, hey, at least I have at least some sort of process here.
So I've had a bunch of false starts because I didn't know exactly what I wanted, and they just tried to fill their own time because they felt like it was their job to fill their time. And so it was like me creating things that weren't even based on what works. And so what I love about Systemology is you start with that critical client flow and you say, like, these are the most important steps to actually making this business work, right? To actually like getting people who want to pay us money and then delivering what we promised to them, right? And having them come back. And once you've documented that and you've gone through it, even just a couple times yourself, then it might make sense to say, like, well, maybe they could help me with identifying people who match this this target audience, and then maybe doing an initial reach out and say, hey, we'd like to talk to you about this. And then you take over the rest. Or maybe they help with invoicing or project setup, or they handle some of the side emails like, hey, now that we're done with the project and you seem to be happy with the results, is there anybody else that you can think of who you think would be a good fit for our services that we could talk to? And just like all these little things that can be helpful in moving your business forward that don't necessarily have to be like your deep work time, right? To use the Cal Newport term, they can kind of help take over that, but they don't necessarily, you don't know what that is to ask them to do at the very beginning. So my thought,
100%. I think figuring out a little bit of what it is that you want to systemize. That's why I said, even when I look back in my journals, I didn't realize I was doing it until I started going, what did I do? The critical client flow becomes your guiding map, because you're basically saying, what is the minimum viable product for your business? What is the minimum viable systems, operating systems to get your business to make money? Because that's the whole purpose here. The business doesn't work unless you've got cash flow, and that's the fuel that runs the engine. So we have to figure out how to make that work. And if you keep that front and center, you figure out what your critical client flow works like, and then you just diligently work away at getting that to the point where it can be delivered without key person dependency. You create that's a game changer. You now create something that's scalable. You now create something that can make money without you. It becomes a money machine. That's ultimately what you're looking for.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess to anybody who has gone through my client getting blueprint or even the free Launch Your Client Business mini course, like this is so in alignment with that. It's just David gave you the thinking that I put into it instead of me giving you like my steps. So both are actually really complementary, but I want to focus on now at this point, for everybody who hasn't already Googled Systemology and landed on Amazon and bought the book, I would strongly encourage you to do that, or I created a link, breakthroughmarketingsecrets.com/systemology will take you to the Amazon listing for the book, either one. And also, David, I want you to describe the Academy link a little bit. You have a lot of free, valuable resources. I already put it in the chat once, but you have a lot of free, valuable resources there that supplement the book. So can you kind of describe what to expect there if somebody wants to dig in?
Yeah, when you get the book, I talk about a lot of the handouts, things like the critical client flow template, and then how do we start to assign the knowledge, like figure out where the knowledge in the team exists, and a range of those templates straight from the book. You don't even need to get the book. If you just go to systemology.com/academy, you can get access to all of those. And then there's a range of additional videos. Like I've run quite a few different workshops and interviews, and we talk about the 4 stages of business systemization and the 7 myths of business systems. And there's a range of things in there. There's also right at the end of it a business system strength test to kind of find out where you're weakest and what areas you need to work on. And it's all inside the Academy. So definitely check that out. I know it's systemology.com/academy, and Roy just posted it there in the chat. And that's a great place just to get started. Even it just kind of starts to get you thinking, because the truth of the matter is, I personally don't love systems and processes. I don't get excited by the idea of writing a step-by-step process with screenshots and workflows. Like that really isn't what gets me excited. What actually happened, which completely changed the way that I look at systems, is I fell in love with the result. I now know what the difference between a business that runs with systems versus a business that doesn't run with systems. And it is a night and day difference. And there is no way to build a business that works beyond you as the business owner without having business systems. So it is a path and a bridge that all business owners must cross if they want to build a business without them. So I then realized, oh, wow, business systems is so key to master. And I fell in love with that. And I think that's what makes Systemology unique, is because I'm a visionary creative and I can now communicate from that perspective, but help the visionary creative understand why this detailed process-driven way of business is so important. And the fact is, you as a creative, you can own a systemized business. Most creatives think, oh no, I've tried to systemize in the past. I can't do that. That's not for me. I'm just not a systems person. And I'm telling you now, as a systems person, as a creative person, yes, you can. It's possible to have a systems-driven business, even if you don't see yourself as a systems person.
I feel like, and I don't know if this is too much of a tangent right here at the end, but so many great businesses that scale beyond just kind of that startup stage have the founder who's like this creative entrepreneur, and then they have a manager who is essentially the CEO role. And when that manager has a process in place to like turn ideas into systems. What happens is that creative entrepreneur can just keep putting ideas into the business, and where the manager can make it fit, it just creates that snowball effect of the business. And so it's like, Elon Musk wants to create an electric car company, and he builds that, and then he wants to go to Mars, and he builds that, and he wants to do private space travel, and he builds that. And it's just like all these ideas are getting rolled up into the systems of his businesses. And the same thing happens with any good business that has like the system stuff in the background. And I guess you made that point in the book. There was Walt Disney had Roy, and Henry Ford had, I think, his cousin. And all of these great entrepreneurs had somebody behind the scenes who was taking all their great ideas and like saying, okay, but how do we implement that? Okay, let's turn it into a system, and let's make it bigger than you even dreamed of.
And that's the job of that visionary creative, is actually to lob those ideas in. And then you need a system that captures that great idea, goes, is this a good idea or a rubbish idea? Okay, it's a good idea. Now let's try and integrate it into what we're doing, then adjust the business system. The business owner does their best work when they operate outside of the business system. Gerber talked about it however many moons ago, working in it versus on it. Yes, at times you have to work in it, but the more that you can work on it and get out of the system, that's where you'll get the most explosive growth and insights and building the business that you really want to build.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And for everybody who's watching the recordings, check out the links in the description of this, so you can get access to the Academy and to the book as well. I strongly encourage everybody to pick it up and go through it a couple times. The audiobook version is great. The ebook version is great. I don't have a physical copy, but it looks great on your shelf too. And and the content's great no matter how you consume it. David, thank you so much for taking even just a little bit of extra time here to go through this. Thanks for everybody who's joined. I'm seeing appreciate the value bomb. Thanks a ton, guys. Great interview. So thank you so much. Yeah, thank you.
Pleasure. Yeah, thanks for having me. And just if anything, I hope whoever's listening to this lit a fire inside them to take another look at business systems. That's my big goal here. I want you to give them a second go if you've written them off previously.
Awesome. Thank you so much.